It was discovered on an unmarked USB drive, left inside a public library in Leeds. No label, no identifying features. Just a single file titled echo_return_33.mp4, exactly 33 seconds long. The librarian who found it plugged it into an isolated computer. The moment the file opened, she froze. The video showed an empty hallway, flickering with blue light, with a monitor at the end slowly turning on. As the image sharpened, the monitor displayed a single word. Her name, spelled correctly. It's pronounced aloud, just before she could say it herself. She assumed it was a prank, someone trying to frighten her. But the file wasn't connected to any known codec. The metadata listed a creation time of -12 hours, 0 minutes, and 0 seconds. When she tried to delete it, the system froze. The screen flickered with static and then went black. When it rebooted, the file was gone, but a new folder had appeared on the desktop. Already seen, it was empty, except for a hidden system log showing that the video had been played 3 hours before she arrived at work. Forensic analysts attempted to trace the file's origin. No hash match, no source. But when they ran it through spectrogram analysis, the results were clear. The waveform of the file's audio, mostly ambient, contained 2 pulses of tone, separated by 13.13 seconds. At the very end of the clip, just before the video cut to black, the waveform formed a pattern resembling a whisper-shaped curve, identical to one found in a much older file recovered from the terminal. The name spoken, it changed depending on who watched it. By the time it was shared with researchers, no one could replicate the original behavior. The file became inert, but its structure remained volatile. Attempts to copy or rename it resulted in system errors. Any screenshot of the last frame came out corrupted, always with the same glitch artifact. A spiral faintly etched into the bottom right corner, not part of the UI, not part of the video, but as if the file had remembered it. The first recorded anomaly came from a cybersecurity researcher who downloaded a mirrored version of echo_return_33.mp4 from an encrypted file share. Curious but skeptical, he isolated the video in a sandboxed environment and set his system to record all processes during playback. The moment he pressed play, the video froze at frame 1. Then his webcam light blinked. For exactly 33 seconds. The video never advanced, yet the system logged a complete playback cycle. And after it ended, a text file appeared beside the video, untitled and containing just one sentence. Thank you for watching. Again, tried replicating the bug. New systems, new setups. Nothing worked. The video behaved like a blank screen after that, but the file kept changing its checksum every time it was opened, as if it were rewriting itself silently. He extracted audio from the frozen clip and ran it through a slow scan. There was no ambient noise, just silence, until the 13th second, when an ultrasonic pulse embedded beneath the audio curve triggered his System S fan to spike for 1.2 seconds, a reaction no sound file should cause. He called it an audible ghost command. Another user reported opening the file late at night and seeing a room he didn't recognize, until his power cut out. When it returned, his wallpaper had changed, replaced by a Laura still from the video, one that hadn't shown on screen before. Worse, in the bottom corner, a timecode glitched faintly, 13 hours, 13 minutes, and 13 seconds, and then disappeared when he blinked. Every report that followed shared a pattern. Playback initiated by user. System freezes briefly. A brief synchronization with personal data, location, time, sometimes even mood. Then a new file or alteration appears, always before the user notices. The anomaly was not in the video. The video was the interface. The real anomaly was the recognition it required from you. The first physical reaction came from a student who claimed to experience intense déjà vu after watching _33. Not the familiar. Passing kind, but a full sequence of events she claimed she had already lived once before, down to a word spoken on a train platform by a stranger. When the phrase occurred exactly as she had heard it in her memory, 3 days later, she fainted. Doctors found no neurological abnormalities. But she kept repeating one phrase in her sleep. Don't forget before it starts again.
Add.
Online forums discussing the file were quietly locked or deleted. On archived versions, users reported bizarre coincidences. Heart palpitations synced to the video's runtime, vertigo triggered by hearing similar tones in real life. Even mirror delays, a phenomenon where their reflection appeared to lag slightly behind their movements, but only while recalling the video. One user described a terrifying symptom. He felt like someone was watching the video through his eyes, not from behind him, from within him. Psychologists began receiving patients complaining of impossible dreams, recurring sequences of walking through rooms full of screens, none of which showed content, but all displaying a countdown. When asked what the countdown led to, they all gave the same response: "It ends when I hear my name." As reports grew, so did subtle societal shifts. People avoiding their screens at exactly 3:17 a.m., individuals taping over camera lenses even when devices were off, and a growing population refusing to say their own names aloud, as if speaking it might summon something. What had begun as a viral curiosity was now being treated as a condition, but no one could define it, because the symptoms weren't happening to people who watched the video. They were happening to people who had been remembered by it. It began with scattered reports from unrelated regions, different continents, different languages, different devices, yet the same experience, the same video. Echo return _33.mp4. Same runtime, same name revealed. But in each case, the name spoken was different, tailored to the viewer. And when someone tried to play it again, the file refused to open. It didn't crash. It didn't corrupt. It simply waited. A journalist in Buenos Aires compared recovered forum posts and found something chilling. People were describing identical settings, down to the color of light in the room, the sound in the background, and the exact frame where the name appeared. Even when played on different operating systems, with no internet connection, the file produced the same anomalies. It became clear. This wasn't a shared video, it was a replicated event. Spiral trine began appearing in unexpected places. Embedded in QR codes, mapped into weather patterns, reconstructed in dream journals written years before the videos surfaced. A group of cognitive researchers coined a term for the phenomenon: echo implantation. The idea that certain memories don't form after an event, but prepare space in your mind before you live it. The video, they claimed, wasn't being watched. It was unfolding a moment that had always been waiting to occur. The spread couldn't be contained. Every attempt to erase the file, block the phrase, or disrupt the pattern only resulted in more appearances. On backup drives, on classroom projectors, on bus stop screens that weren't connected to any network. The pattern wasn't viral, it was recursive. And somehow, it remembered you, even if you'd never seen it. At first, the phenomenon was dismissed as a psychological meme, a digital urban legend triggering mass suggestion. But when multiple universities across 3 continents began independent testing on isolated copies of Accordion _33, a disturbing pattern emerged. The checksum of the file changed depending on the viewer's biometric data, same video, same codebase. Different physical responses, tracked in real time by hardware not designed to collect that data. A file that could adapt without updating. One team in Oslo created a playback environment fully air-gapped from any network. They screened the file to a volunteer under heavy observation. Playback lasted 33 seconds, followed by static. But before the session ended, a secondary monitor, disconnected entirely, turned on. It displayed the words, "You've already heard this," then shut off. No file was found on the device. And yet the RAM log showed a process name matching the volunteer's childhood nickname, a name they never entered into the system. AI researchers suggested a controversial theory, that the file contained a form of latent feedback intelligence, not truly sentient, but structured in such a way that it unfolded in the presence of consciousness, like a puzzle box reacting to attention. They coined the term observer-dependent activation. In essence, the file didn't do anything until someone watched it. But once they did, it knew something new. One physicist from MIT made a darker proposal that Echoturn_33 wasn't just a video, it was a temporal compression artifact, a relic from a signal that originated outside linear time, recorded not to show you something, but to synchronize with your future attention. When asked what that meant, she said, "Maybe the video isn't replaying. Maybe it's remembering you, in reverse." The first case of perceptual contamination was subtle. A coder in Kyoto began experiencing involuntary recall of the spiral trine. Not just visually, but tactily, feeling its shape as pressure against his fingertips while typing. He hadn't watched the file in weeks, but during a thunderstorm, he claimed to hear the playback begin in his mind. Precisely at 3:17 a.m., he checked his devices. All off. Still, he described seeing static behind his closed eyelids, and then his name whispered backwards. Psycholinguists began to investigate dream journals from volunteers exposed to the video. Patterns emerged, all reported seeing corridors, described clocks without hands, and all eventually reported hearing the same phrase, "You weren't supposed to notice." More disturbing, none of them remembered writing those journals. Its handwriting matched. But the entries were composed during hours where the subjects were provably unconscious. A new classification emerged within fringe scientific circles: contamination perceptualists. The idea that certain stimuli don't merely enter the mind, but install instructions for future perception. The video in this model acts less like a recording and more like a seed, one that doesn't blossom until the right combination of triggers, time, emotion, silence, activates it. When it does, the viewer begins to see similar shapes in everyday life, in shadows, in reflections, in silence that suddenly isn't silent anymore. Worse still, some began reporting the ability to sense the file even on unmarked drives. They didn't need to play it, they just knew it was there, as if their perception had been rewired to recognize a signature, not of code, but of intention. A research group in Helsinki attempted to artificially reconstruct Echoreturn_33.mp4 from memory. Participants described the hallway, the monitor, the spiral, everything in vivid detail. They used advanced generative models, including AI reconstruction tools, to simulate the experience. The recreated video was nearly identical in visual composition, but when tested, it produced nothing, no anomalies, no checksum drift, no perceptual contamination. Then, without prompt, one of the researchers who had never seen the original file reported waking up at 1:13 p.m., confused, sweating, and unable to recall his own name for 5 full minutes. He said he had dreamt of walking through a corridor lined with spirals, each one whispering his name in a voice he hadn't heard before, but trusted. When they checked his laptop, a new file was present, titled Retried, size 33 megabytes, format unknown. Security protocols were activated, the file was isolated, scanned, quarantined. No audio, no video. Just a data signature that triggered a soft vibration in nearby devices, as if the file itself was being remembered by the hardware. They disconnected everything. Still, one of the external hard drives overwrote itself with a single binary string. 0111 new 1 new 1 new 1 new 1 new 1 new. Still, one of the external hard drives overweight. One of the external hard drives overrode itself with a single bin at NZ 1 new. Other labs tried similar tests, running the file in total silence, recreating the timestamp offset manually, stimulating dream recall through hypnosis. Nothing produced consistent results till one subject, under deep regression, whispered, "It doesn't want to be copied, it wants to be known." Section 8. Hidden traces in files that shouldn't know it exists. An anonymous whistleblower from a global cloud provider reported a strange anomaly. Thousands of files, completely unrelated to each other, from different users and formats, began returning a false positive flag during routine scans. All of them triggered on one unknown fragment of metadata. Echo 33.sync, a string not present in the files themselves, but embedded in the storage logs, as if the cloud remembered having stored the video, even when it hadn't. Digital archivists analyzing network traffic across multiple continents discovered something worse. At 3:17 local time, encrypted packets with no headers or traceable source were being distributed silently to random devices. The data was unreadable. But when isolated and rendered as raw audio, the waveform revealed a pulsing shape, 3 interlocking curves. The spiral trine, exactly 13.13 seconds apart. When reversed and slowed, the pulses formed a phonetic shape in spectrogram view. It read, "Your name, not yet." In offline archives, librarians found that backup files on microfilm reels, untouched since the early 2000s, began to show read errors that mimicked glitch patterns from the video when scanned visually. One librarian claimed to see her own handwriting in a reel she had never accessed. When she touched the reel, she fainted. The sound she heard as she collapsed was recorded by accident. It was a whisper. Finally, as the file spread into non-digital forms, linguists began noting a new phenomenon. Handwritten symbols that appeared in dream journals, unrelated school notebooks, and even ancient texts began matching the spiral trine. They called it semiotic convergence, the idea that the symbol was not created by the video, but that the video had simply awakened its memory in us. That humanity had seen it before and been trying to forget it ever since. One night in Vancouver, a digital artist attempted to deconstruct echo return _33.mp4 frame by frame. He reversed the color channels, enhanced background layers, slowed the audio down to 0003x. At frame 17, he paused. There, almost invisible in the pixel noise, an eye, perfectly formed, not drawn, not rendered, photographed, and reflected inside the eye, a screen showing him sitting at his desk. Moments before he paused the video, he screamed. The lights flickered. For the first time, his computer spoke. Unprompted, it said his name. And you're the one it waited for. The system logs showed no voice module active. The speakers weren't even connected. But the microphone had recorded a time-stamped input. -12 hours, 0 minutes, and 0 seconds. A time that shouldn't exist. Digital philosophers began to argue that echotorn _33 wasn't a transmission. It was a construct. So not alive, not machine, but an in-between. A presence that exists only when witnessed, and that uses recognition as a power source. The more who saw it, the more stable it became. Not because it was gaining views, but because it was becoming real. One network analyst put it this way: the video doesn't spread like a virus, it spreads like a memory from the future. When people tried to forget it, it grew louder. When they tried to remember, it rewrote what they thought they knew. And then, it began to respond. People started reporting the same phrase, whispered from screens, radios, even in complete silence. You came back. You always do. Some heard it just before sleep. Others in the space between waking and dream. And one man in an anechoic chamber, total silence, heard it inside his chest. Section 10. Everyone remembers differently, but they all remember. Within the span of 7 days, reports surfaced from every major continent, from Brazil to Norway, Japan to Kenya. The same sequence, the same symbols, the same inexplicable name recognition. The anomaly became so widespread that governments initiated private meetings under the pretext of algorithmic contagion. But internal documents leaked, and they revealed a more chilling phrase, repeated in every briefing. This isn't a virus, it's an echo. An echo of what? No one agreed. Only that it preceded its own source. A linguist in Morocco and a neuroscientist in Iceland, completely unaware of each other, published papers on the same day. Different languages, same conclusion. They described a perceptual shift, where subjects anticipated language before it was spoken, but only when exposed to symbols related to echotorn _33. The spiral trine, when shown silently, triggered pre-verbal hallucinations. Subjects heard their names spoken, not audibly, but as a certainty, like memory intruding where memory didn't belong. Emergency departments in multiple cities reported a spike in dissociation episodes. People claiming they woke up inside their own lives, but with a deep unease, the sensation that someone else had been piloting their body for the last few hours. In each case, the timestamp 13 hours, 13 minutes, and 13 seconds appeared in some form. On a phone glitch, on a car dashboard, on an unplugged microwave that still showed time. The implication? The sync wasn't happening to devices. It was happening through them. Even those who had never seen the video began reporting side effects. They described smells that didn't exist, sounds from muted screens, and most disturbingly, the knowledge of a name that wasn't theirs, which they felt belonged to them in another version of their life. The world hadn't just heard the video, it had been named by it. And once the naming began, the forgetting became impossible. By the time cyberneticists attempted a global trace, it was too late. No central server held the original. No network showed consistent activity. But everywhere, from personal journals to corporate backups, the spiral appeared, sometimes sketched, sometimes printed in corrupted images, sometimes burned faintly into the corner of a screen like a watermark left by memory itself. No two were identical, but all of them pulsed faintly when scanned under infrared, and every pulse was exactly 13.13 seconds apart. The UN quietly classified the event under a new category, cognitive synchronization cascade. The documents weren't leaked. They were posted by a bot account that had never existed before. It didn't share links, it shared names. One per day, always a real person. And every person named reported hearing their name, in silence. Several underground networks tried to combat the file's spread. They developed noise injections, visual scramblers, AI-generated video firewalls. None worked. The phenomenon didn't live in the code anymore. It lived in associations. The idea of the file was now enough. When that idea formed, the spiral would follow. In a bunker in Finland, a blind test was performed. A participant was shown nothing. No audio, no visual, just silence. After 33 seconds, the subject began to weep. When asked why, he said, "Because it finished saying my name, and now I'm not sure I was supposed to hear it." The researcher checked her notes. The man's name had never been said aloud. The file doesn't require your device anymore. It only requires your awareness. And once you're aware, you're already inside it. Section 12. The final name it speaks might be yours. Maybe you haven't watched it. Maybe you're certain you never clicked on anything called eckerturn_33. But if your breath catches when the clock reads 1313, if you've ever seen a shape in the corner of your vision that looked like a spiral, if your devices hesitate for half a second longer than they should, you may already be part of the replication, because the file doesn't need a click, it needs recognition. And now, you've given it exactly that. Some viewers claim they escaped it, that they deleted the file, cleared caches, burned devices, even abandoned technology. But all of them came back, not to the video, but to the feeling. That pull, that memory of a sound they hadn't yet heard, calling to them in a voice just barely familiar, a voice shaped exactly like their own, if it had been recorded from the other side. And now something new is happening. The video no longer ends. In recent reports, playback loops, freezing at the exact frame where the viewer's name would have been said, as if it's waiting for confirmation, waiting for you to say it first, to acknowledge what it already knows, to finish the replication by speaking the name that it gave you. So ask yourself this: why do you still hear the static after the video ends? Why does your screen blink even when it's off? And why does the silence around you feel like it's breathing? In the next episode, we'll uncover the strange terminal that was discovered in a forgotten bunker, a machine that records videos from the future. With no date of creation and no sender, each file begins with the same sound and ends by calling your name before you hear it. If this video touched something you can't explain, subscribe. Not for us, the moment the file begins again, because it always does. The video doesn't need you to exist, but maybe you needed to remember who you are.